Always just joking, always lightening the mood, but her jokes always came at my expense, hiding my car keys before work, accidentally deleting my playlists, making a show of rolling her eyes when I talked about my writing, calling it me little hobby, personality different stuff. That broke something open. 2 weeks later, fate handed me an opportunity wrapped in irony. Claire had this ritual every Friday buying a lottery ticket on her way home. She'd joke that one day she'd strike it rich, dump her job, and maybe even buy you some real coffee. Babe, I always smiled, but inside, I'd scoff. People like her never win, until she did. I'll never forget that night. She burst into the apartment, hair wild from the rain, waving a ticket like it was the Holy Grail. Ethan, she screamed. I won. Oh my God, I actually won. At first, I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. She showed me the numbers, read them out loud, trembling with excitement. $32 million. My stomach clenched. $32 million. She danced around the living room, laughing, crying, screaming, "We're rich." And all I could think about was we. Because it wasn't we who'd won, it was her. She'd bought the ticket, not me. And knowing her, she'd make sure I never forgot it. That night, I lay awake listening to her soft snores and thought about every smug laugh, every petty prank, every time she'd made me feel small. The decaf, especially. It wasn't just about caffeine. It was a reminder that she could mess with my life, and I'd just take it. So I decided I wouldn't take it anymore. It took me 2 days to plan it. She always kept her ticket in the same spot, tucked inside her wallet, between her ID and a photo of her mother. I printed a replica on high-quality paper, down to the serial number. A little research, a little Photoshop magic. And it was perfect. Except for one crucial difference. I changed a single digit. Just enough that it was no longer a winner. The morning I made the swap, she was in the shower. I moved quietly, methodically. The sound of running water masked every zip and shuffle. When I slid the fake ticket into her wallet and pocketed the real one, I felt an odd calm. Like I'd just evened a cosmic scale. Thought to a day, I watched telling you on her job. Buy a beach house, maybe even start a charity. She had no idea. And every time, she smiled. I sipped my perfectly caffeinated coffee and smiled too. When the day came to claim the prize, I drove her to the lottery office. She wore her best dress, practically glowing. "Ethan, can you believe this?" she whispered as we parked. "All our problem, yeah. Premier c'est sauf." Hard to believe. I waited in the car while she went inside. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. When she finally came out, her face was pale, her eyes hollow. She didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at the pavement like the world had cracked open beneath her feet. "What happened?" I asked, feigning confusion. "They said it's not the right number," she whispered. "It's off by one." I swear it was the same ticket, Ethan. I checked it 100 times. I put a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe you misread it," I murmured as she sank to her knees in the parking lot, sobbing. In that moment, I thought in store, but I still felt nothing, just a hollow quiet, like after a storm. Later that night, she found the fake ticket again and screamed my name from the kitchen. The sound cut through the walls, sharp and final. And as she stood there trembling, clutching that useless scrap of paper, I finally realized the truth. Revenge doesn't taste sweet, not even with caffeine. She didn't throw the ticket at me, though I half expected her to. She just stood there, shaking, the cheap kitchen light flickering above her. The silence between us was so thick it could have strangled the both of us. I could see the moment the anger began to bloom in her eyes, the disbelief shifting into something far darker. "You switched it," she whispered, her voice trembling like a plucked string. "I don't know how, but you did." I took a slow sip of coffee, deliberately, feeling the steam curl against my lip. "That's a hell of an accusation." Claire, her face flushed red. "Don't play dumb with me, Ethan. You think I don't notice when you get that smug little smirk. You've been off ever since I won." Won. The word tasted bitter now, even though she'd never see a dime. "You're tired," I said calmly. "You've been under a lot of stress." "Stop it!" she snapped. "Stop gaslighting me. I know you did something. I just don't know what." The word gaslighting hit me like a dart, sharp and irritating. Claire had a habit of using words she picked up from podcasts to justify her tantrums. Every argument turned into some diagnostic checklist. Toxic this, manipulative that, but this time I didn't argue back. I just stared at her, because for the first time, she was right. She turned away, clutching the fake ticket, and stormed toward the bedroom. A minute later, I heard drawers slamming, the rustle of papers. She was searching for the real one. I let her, because she'd never find it. It was hidden in a place so ordinary that even her obsessive streak wouldn't reach at the hollowed-out base of my French press. A place she never touched because, as she always said, coffee is your religion, not mine. She tore through the apartment for hours. I watched TV with the volume low, pretending not to. Noticed the chaos around me. The sound of drawers opening, cupboards banging, her muttering curses under her breath. Occasionally, she'd stop and just glare at me, as if expecting me to crack under the weight of her rage. But I didn't. That night, she didn't come to bed. I found her sitting at the kitchen table at dawn, a cup of untouched tea in front of her, her hair a tangled mess. The decaf tin sat next to her, like some cruel reminder of how this all started. "Why, Ethan," she whispered, "if you did it." Why, I could have lied. Could have denied it until the end of time. But something about the quiet tone, in her voice, the exhaustion, the cracks in her certainty made me want to tell her the truth, or at least part of it. "You remember, when you swapped my coffee?" I asked softly. Her eyes flicked up, wary. "That's not even close to the same thing, isn't it?" I leaned forward. "You took something you knew I needed. You watched me stumble through that day like I was losing my mind. And when I called you on it, you laughed. You say 'twa funny," her lips parted what it was, wasn't it? "A joke, just another one of your little experiments. You like watching people squirm, Claire. You always have. That's not true," she said weakly. "It is," I said. "You just don't like it when the tables turn." For a long moment, we sat there in silence, the sound of the clock ticking loud enough to make the air vibrate. Then, slowly, she stood up. "You're sick," she said, her voice low and trembling. "You actually think this is the same? You cost me everything." "No," I said. "You cost yourself everything when you stopped respecting the line between a joke and cruelty." She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "You think this makes you the hero in your little story? You're just a petty, jealous man who can't stand seeing someone else happy. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was. But at that point, it didn't matter anymore. The damage was already carved deep into the walls of our lives. She packed a bag that afternoon. I didn't stop her. Didn't beg. Didn't plead. I just watched her walk out, the door closing with a click that sounded more final than any argument we'd ever had. For a few days, the silence was peaceful. No humming in the morning, no sarcastic comments, no tension pulsing beneath every word. I thought maybe I'd done the right thing, that peace had finally found me. But peace, it turns out, has an expiration date. On the 5th night, I came home to find the apartment door slightly open. I froze in the hallway, heart thudding. When I pushed the door, it creaked like something out of a nightmare. The lights were off, except for the soft yellow glow from the kitchen, and there she was, sitting at the table, calm, collected, and smiling. "Elle, Ethan," she said, her voice unnervingly smooth. "Miss me?" My throat tightened. "How did you get in?" She held up her old key, dangling it between her fingers. "You never changed the locks. Claire, what are you doing here?" "Oh, just revisiting old memories." She gestured to the French press sitting on the counter. "You know, I made us some coffee. Thought it'd be poetic." I stared at it, the steam curled upward, lazy and hypnotic. "What did you put in it?" I asked. Her smile widened. "Maybe caffeine?" "Maybe Decaf." "Maybe something else entirely." "Claire, drink it," she interrupted softly. For old time's sake, the air between us thickened with unspoken things, anger, guilt, maybe even the remnants of something like love. My mind raced. She couldn't possibly know where I'd hidden the real ticket. Could she? Then I saw it. On the table. The real one. Pristine, uncrumpled, untouched. My stomach dropped. Sure not. The flicker in my eyes and laughter low. Cruel sound. "Took me a while," she said. "But I know you too well. Ethan, you never throw anything away." Especially not your precious coffee toys. She slid the ticket toward me like a dealer, offering a loaded card. You wanted revenge. Congratulations, you got it. But guess what? The lottery office called. You never cashed it. And now it's expired. I blinked. Heart pounding. What? Oh, yeah, she said, sipping her coffee. Eyes locked on mine. You held onto it too long. Guess neither of us wins. The clock ticked again, louder this time. Outside, the rain began to fall. And for the first time since this entire mess began, I realized what we'd both truly lost, something far more valuable than money or caffeine. We'd lost the part of ourselves that could ever forgive. I didn't move at first. I just stood there in the doorway, staring at her like a ghost I'd summoned myself. The air between us felt heavy, humid with things unsaid. Her words rang in my ears like a verdict. You never cashed it. And now it's expired. I wanted to tell her she was lying. That it wasn't possible. That tickets like that didn't just expire, but the look on her face, the small, satisfied tilt of her mouth told me otherwise. She checked. She knew. How long? I asked quietly. Her eyebrow arched, slow and deliberate. About 90 days, apparently. Funny thing, I called them this morning just to confirm my loss. Turns out your little secret stash came with a built-in timer. My chest tightened. You went through my stuff. She smirked. Oh, don't pretend you're outraged. After all, I learned from the best. Something inside me cracked. Claire, you ruined everything, I said, my voice low, shaking. You couldn't just let it go, could you? Her laughter was soft but sharp, like glass scraping tile. Me, I ruined everything. She stood, her chair screeching back. You sweet shed. My winning ticket, Ethan. You took millions from me because I made you drink decaf. Do you even hear how insane that sounds? It wasn't about the coffee, I hissed. It was about you. The way you always had to be in control. The way you treated everything. Like a game, my sleep, my sanity, my damn life. Then maybe, she said. Stepping closer, you should have left instead of playing God. The word God echoed between us, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Rain lashed against the windows, the rhythmic drumming, like a heartbeat trying to escape. I could smell the coffee she'd made, dark, rich, familiar. My hands trembled without me realizing it. You didn't come here to talk, I said finally. No, she replied, and her smile faded. I came here to end it. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out. My heart lurched, but it wasn't a weapon. It was a small envelope, plain, white, and perfectly sealed. She tossed it onto the table. What's that? Proof, she said simply. You think you're the only one who can plan things. While you were busy hiding my ticket, I was installing a camera. I froze. You're lying. Am I? She asked, tilting her head. Go ahead. Open it. I hesitated, then tore the envelope open. Inside was a single flash drive, labeled in her neat handwriting, kitchen cam -6/14, the morning I'd made the switch. My stomach dropped. You had a camera in the kitchen. She shrugged. You're predictable, Ethan. You always make your coffee in the morning. And I knew that if you ever tried something, it would be there. For a second, the world tilted. I saw it all, her setting up the tiny lens between the cookbooks, the soft hum of betrayal beneath her smile each morning. You spied on me, I whispered. She laughed bitterly. Says the man who committed grand theft and fraud. I wanted to shout, to tear the drive from her hand, to make her stop smirking, but I didn't move. Because beneath all the fury, there was something else in her eyes, sadness. A deep, exhausted kind of sadness. I'm not here to blackmail you, she said after a long pause. I'm done playing games. I just wanted you to know I saw you, all of you. The lies, the calm, the way you justified every little cruelty. You think revenge makes you powerful. But it just makes you small. Her voice cracked at the end, and for the first time in years, I almost believed her. What are you going to do with it? I asked. Nothing, she said. It's over. I don't care about the money anymore. I just wanted you to see what you've become. She turned to leave, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. I followed her to the door without realizing it. Claire, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Wait, she paused, but didn't look back. I never wanted it to go this far, I said. I just wanted you to understand what it felt like to lose control, to be the one who didn't matter. She exhaled slowly. Then, congratulations. You got what you wanted, and with that, she was gone. Message. I twisted the lid open slowly. Inside wasn't coffee. It was a small, folded note written in her looping handwriting. Greater than. You always said caffeine makes you sharper. Greater than. Let's see if you're smart enough to figure out what comes next. No signature. Just that. My pulse quickened. It wasn't a threat. Not directly, but it wasn't innocent either. My first instinct was to call her, demand what the hell she meant, but I stopped myself. She wanted a reaction. That was always her power, move getting me to play the next round. Still, I couldn't shake the unease crawling under my skin. I turned the apartment upside down, half convinced she'd planted another camera or something worse, but there was nothing. No wires, no lenses, no trace. Just that note and the faint scent of her perfume in the air. Bienvenue, premier. Sat back down, excited maybe she was bolt meant nothing. But part of me knew Better Claire didn't bluff without purpose. The next morning, I found the second note. It was taped to my car door. Same handwriting, same tone. Greater than sleep well. Check your email. I felt the first real flicker of fear. My hand shook as I unlocked my phone and opened my inbox. There it was, an email, from an address I didn't recognize, subject line blank. Inside was a single link. For a moment, I hovered over it, torn between curiosity and dread. Then I clicked. It opened a video. The same Kitrav only Steam Whale was online. Uploaded to a private link, unlisted but ready to be shared. The timestamp and my face were clear as day. Below it, a short caption, greater than when revenge becomes confession. My stomach turned. She hadn't gone to the police, at least not yet. But she'd found a way to hold it over me, to make sure I never forgot. One click, and she could destroy me. My job, my reputation, everything. And the worst part, she knew I wouldn't risk it. Because she understood me better than anyone ever had. The following week was hell. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time an email arrived, my chest tightened. I couldn't focus at work. I jumped at small noises. My boss asked if I was burning out again, and I mumbled something about sleep problems. But inside, I was unraveling. By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to her to end this. One way or another. She wasn't answering calls, so I drove to her apartment. The place looked the same, neat and symmetrical, blinds half open, light spilling onto the sidewalk. I rang the bell. No response. I knocked harder. Claire, I know you're in there. Nothing. I waited a minute, then two. Just as I turned to leave, the door opened a crack. She stood there, barefoot, wearing one of my old shirts. Wow, she said softly. You look terrible. Let me in. I said, why? We need to talk. She smiled faintly. Do we? Because I think we already said everything that mattered. Claire, I said, lowering my voice. Please. I saw the video. Amen. You made your point. Oh, I'm not done making points, she said, stepping aside. Come in. The living room looked exactly as I remembered it, minimalist, pristine, like she lived in a magazine spread. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and coffee. On the table, her laptop was open, screen glowing. Delete it, I said. She raised an eyebrow. The video? Yes. Now, she leaned back against the counter, crossing her arms. Why would I do that? Because this has gone too far. She tilted her head. Too far. That's an interesting choice of words coming from the guy who destroyed my life. I already told you I'm sorry. No, you told me you regretted getting caught, she said. That's not the same thing. Something in me snapped. What do you want from me? Claire, money, an apology, a confession video of my own. Her eyes softened for the first time. None of that. I just want you to understand that. Actions have consequences. That you can't undo something just because you suddenly feel bad about it. I stared at her, the words sinking deep. And when will it be enough? When I stop waking up in the middle of the night, hearing your voice in my head, she said quietly. When I can look at myself in the mirror and not see the woman who trusted you. Silence settled again, thick and heavy. Outside, traffic hummed distantly. Finally, I said, "You've made your point." She looked at me for a long time, then sighed. "Maybe I have." She turned to the laptop, fingers moving over the keyboard. I watched as she opened the video page, hovered over the delete button, then stopped. "Tell me something first," she said without looking up. "If you could go back, would you still do it?" "The question?" Hung in the air, like smoke. I wanted to say no. Don't he did change in my throat, because part of me, some ugly, broken part, still believed she deserved it. My silence was enough. She closed the laptop gently, her expression unreadable. That's what I thought. I turned to leave, but she called out softly, "Ethan." I paused in the doorway. "I don't hate you," she said. "But I can't forgive you either." Not yet. When I got home that night, the link was gone. Deleted, but the damage wasn't. In the weeks that followed, I tried to rebuild. I stopped drinking coffee altogether, started therapy, went running in the mornings, even tried dating again. But every time I closed my eyes, I'd see her face. The moment she found the fake ticket draw, betrayed, unbelieving, and sometimes la tête night word too far, I'd find myself thinking of that first sip of decaf, how simple. Itatzimed? How something so small could start the kind of war no one really wins. Winter came early that year, and the city felt like it was holding its breath. Every morning, frost veined the windows of my apartment, and every night I watched my reflection blur into the glass, wondering if I'd ever really been the man I thought I was before all of this. The coffee machine sat untouched on the counter, a relic of another life. I told myself quitting caffeine was about control, about taking back what she'd stolen from me. But the truth was simpler. I couldn't stand the smell anymore. It reminded me of her laughter, that sharp, metallic sound right before everything broke. 3 months had passed since I last saw Claire. The video was gone, the ticket expired, the money vanished into nothing. The world had moved on. But I hadn't. Guilt has a way of fermenting inside you. It doesn't fade, it thickens. I thought about her every morning. Not the version of her screaming, not the one holding the fake ticket, but the one who'd used to dance barefoot on the kitchen tiles while the kettle whistled. The one who'd made lists of all the places we'd never visit. Sometimes, memory is cruel enough to remind you of the small things when all you want is silence. It was a Tuesday when the letter arrived. No return address, just my name scrawled across the envelope in handwriting I recognized instantly. The paper felt cold, as if it had been sitting in a freezer. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, afraid of what might be inside. Another message, another game. But it wasn't that. Inside was a single sheet of paper, greater than Ethan, greater than I've decided to leave the city. There's nothing left here for me. Don't worry, I'm not going to publish the video. I never was. I just wanted you to know what you're capable of when you think you've been wronged. Greater than I forgive you for switching the ticket. I hope one day you forgive me for the coffee. Greater than. See, I must have read it 20 times before I set it down. It wasn't closure. It wasn't even peace. It was something smaller, quieter. A truce written in past tense. But there was something else, an address scribbled faintly in pencil at the bottom of the page. I recognized the town. It was 2 hours north, a quiet coastal place we'd visited once in better days. I didn't know if it was an invitation or a goodbye. For 3 days, I tried to ignore it. Told myself it wasn't my place anymore, but by the 4th morning, I was already halfway there. The drive felt like driving through an old dream grey sky, the smell of salt water, the dull hum of tires on wet asphalt. When I reached the address, it wasn't a house. It was a small coffee shop. Bag. The paper was crinkled where I'd gripped it too tightly. The word "Second Chances Cuff" was stamped across the label in soft gold ink. By mid-morning, I gave in. The beans hit the grinder with a sound that was almost comforting. The smell rose instantly, rich, sharp, alive. I closed my eyes, breathing it in. It smelled like every morning before things fell apart. Like the first time Claire had moved in. Like something unbroken. When the coffee finished brewing, I poured it into my old mug, the chipped one she always hated. I held it in both hands, feeling the heat seep into my skin. For a long time, I didn't drink. I just looked down at it and thought about how a cup of coffee had somehow started and ended everything. Then I took a sip. It was bitter, strong, real. No decaf, no tricks, just coffee. And for a moment, something inside me loosened. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her, not even at myself. I spent the day cleaning. It was the kind of cleaning that isn't really about dust or clutter, it's about exorcising ghosts. I boxed up the French press, the mugs we bought together, the photos still tucked into drawers. I didn't throw them away. I just put them away. By evening, the apartment felt new, empty, but in a good way. Like a page waiting to be written on. That night, as I sat by the window, with my laptop open, I started to write again, for the first time in almost a year. Not about her, not about revenge, just about people, imperfect ones. People who hurt and heal, and sometimes get it rowengy before they get it right. The words came slow at first, like wading through mud. But once they started, they didn't stop. Paragraph after paragraph poured out, quiet and steady. When I finally looked up, Dawn was bleeding through the blinds. I didn't send the story anywhere. Didn't post it, didn't even save it properly. I just read it once, all the way through, and realized it wasn't a story about her at all. It was about me learning how to stop looking backward. Days passed, then weeks. The winter thawed, and the streets outside filled with people again. I still went to work, still came home to silence, but it was a different kind of silence now, clean, not suffocating. Sometimes, when I walked past the coffee aisle in the grocery store, I'd see her favorite brand sitting on the shelf. Première Nouveau. But I always smiled a little. Some ghosts deserve to stay gentle. It was a Thursday when I got another letter. Same handwriting. Same looping C-no return address, just a postmark from some small coastal town up north. My heart thudded as I opened it. Greater than, Ethan, greater than I read your story. You must have forgotten that you once let me read everything you write automatically. You haven't changed your account. Settings, greater than it was beautiful. Painful, but beautiful, greater than. I'm glad you found a way to turn everything into something that mattered. I meant it when I said I forgave you. And I hope, wherever you are, you're drinking good coffee, greater than. See, I laughed softly when I finished reading. I didn't even remember the old document sharing link, but of course she would have found it. She always found everything. Première folle des. Letter carefully, slid it into a drawer, and sat back. Outside, the sky was the color of cooling ash, the air thick with the promise of another storm. I brewed another cup, poured it into that same chipped mug, and stood by the window while the first drops began to fall. Somewhere out there, I like to think she was doing the same, sitting in a quiet cafe, watching the same rain, breathing the same sharp scent of coffee and clean slate. And maybe, in some small, invisible way, that was enough. Forgiveness isn't fireworks or grand gestures. It's quiet. It's a breath. It's to people, miles apart, finally putting the past down like a weapon they're too tired to hold anymore. I took another sip, the steam curling up against my face, and smiled. For the first time, it didn't taste like bitterness. It tasted like something, new, something alive. It tasted like peace. Spring arrived like a soft apology, slow, hesitant, and somehow more sincere because of it. The city began to smell like wet concrete and jasmine again, the kind of mix that always made me think of her hair after the rain. But time dead times it. Hishage. The ache was still there, but quieter now, folded into the fabric of my days instead of running through every one of them. I'd gotten into the habit of walking before work. Just a few blocks, down past the park and the bookstore, the same route we used to take when we first moved in together. Back then, we'd stop for coffee halfway through her with her oat milk latte, me with my black brew strong enough to strip paint. Now I walked alone, but the world didn't feel empty anymore. It felt paused, waiting. One morning, about 2 months after her last letter, I saw it, a fly attached to a light pole outside the park. The paper was sun-faded, the ink starting to bleed from the drizzle. But I could still read it. Greater than Second Chance's Cough Grand opening, downtown location. April 14th. For a second I thought it was a coincidence, but the font, the colors, the gold lettering, it was the same. Her cafe, the one from the coastal town. My chest tightened. She'd expanded, moved back here. That night, I sat in my apartment for hours, the flyer spread out on the table, in front of me. I told myself I wouldn't go, that it wasn't my place. Hush? Deserved her fresh start without my shadow crossing her door. But curiosity has its own gravity. When the day came, I found myself standing outside the cafe anyway. It was beautiful. Small, warm, with tall windows fogged from the heat inside. The sign above the door gleamed, even in the dull light of early morning. Second chances calf, and beneath it, in smaller script, Brevet d'un esprit expected. I went in. The bell above the door chimed softly, and the smell of roasted beans wrapped around me like an old memory. The place was busy students, couples, office workers, but it had her touch everywhere. Plants in mismatched pots, handwritten quotes on the walls, the playlist humming quietly in the background. A young barista smiled from behind the counter. Welcome in. What can I get started for you? I hesitated, scanning the menu chalked above her head. My eyes landed on something that made me laugh quietly under my breath. Claire's Decaf Redemption Blend. Black coffee, I said finally. The regular kind. Coming right up. I took a seat by the window. The same kind of seat I'd taken at the first cafe, back when I'd found her letter, and the bag off bean. It felt full circle, in a way that almost hurt. When the barista set the cup down in front of me, I noticed the writing on the sleeve. In careful cursive, written in ink, good coffee never lies. I looked up sharply. Across the room, near the back, someone with the counter talking, softly to staff member. Back turned to me. I knew that posture instantly, even from a distance, even after all this time. She turned, slowly, and our eyes met. For a second, everything stopped. The noise of the cafe, the chatter, the clinking mugs, it all faded into a muffled hum. She looked older, maybe, or maybe just calmer. Her hair was shorter, her clothes simpler. But her eyes were the same. That piercing clear livery de tout. Build. Ethan, she said softly, crossing the room. Claire, she smiled small, careful, but real. You came. I didn't mean to. I admitted. You never do, bite it, juste amusement. We stood there for a moment, not sure whether to shake hands, hug, or just let the silence speak for us. Finally, she nodded toward the corner table. Sit with me? I nodded. We sat across from each other to ghosts made flesh again. She watched me over the rim of her mug. I watched her fingers circle the handle of her steady, deliberate, like she was grounding herself in something real. You opened another one, I said after a moment. Here, she nodded. Business is good. People seem to like the name. They should, I said. It's perfect. We fell quiet again. The pause not awkward this time, just full. She leaned back in her chair. You look different. Better or play. And for the first time, I realized how exhausting it must have been for both of us to keep holding on to the roles we'd built. The prankster and the avenger, the victim and the punisher. We'd both lost ourselves somewhere in that tug of war. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started writing her back knot in the way I used to. With anger, hidden under clever words, but honestly. Claire, greater than I came to the cafe today, not because I was looking for you, but because I was looking for something that felt true. I didn't expect to find both. I used to think forgiveness was a prize, something one person gives to another when they've earned it, but it's not. It's the point where you stop trying to win, greater than. I'll help with the foundation. Not because I want redemption points, but because I want to do something that doesn't start or end with regret. I'm glad you're happy. I'm trying to be too greater than. I didn't send it right away. I saved it as a draft, like some part of me needed to sit with the words before letting them go. The next few weeks passed quietly. I helped her foundation launch by writing short bios. For the campaign, website real people with real stories, not polished, just honest. There was a woman who'd lost her savings to an investment scam but started a small bakery. A college kid rebuilding his life after a fraudulent scholarship promise. Every story had pain, but none of them were defined by it. And somehow, as I wrote their stories, mine began to shift too. The guilt didn't disappear, it just stopped owning me. Claire and I saw each other a few more times, always in public, always with purpose. Meetings about the foundation. Conversations about logistics. We were polite, kind, even warm. But there was an invisible, understanding between us now what once was love had become something gentler, wiser. A kind of respect you can only earn after both of you have seen the worst of each other and decided to walk away anyway. One evening, after a fundraising event, we stood outside the cafe again. The air smelled like roasted beans and ocean when carried in from the harbor. The sign above the door flickered slightly, casting gold light across her face. "You did good, Ethan," she said. "The sight, the stories, they're beautiful. You did better," I replied. "You turned something ugly into something that helps people," she smiled. We both did. A long silence settled between us, not awkward, but deep, the kind of silence that says everything words would ruin. "Then sure think about would have happened if none of that," she gestured vaguely toward the past, "ever happened." I exhaled slowly, sometimes. "But I think we'd still have broken somehow. Just slower, softer, maybe not enough to notice until it was too late." She nodded. "Yeah, maybe the only way we could have learned was the hard way. I just wish it hadn't hurt so much." She looked at me for a long time, her eyes reflecting the glow of the cafe sign. "Pain's just the tax for feeling deeply, Ethan. The only people who never heard her the bots my because we knew it was true." After she left, I lingered for a while, watching her walk down the street until she disappeared into the crowd. The city hummed around me, alive and endless. When I finally turned to go, I caught sight of the cafe's chalkboard. Someone probably had written a new quote since the last time I'd been there. "Greater than forgiveness doesn't rewrite the story. It just gives it a better ending." I stood there for a long time, reading it over and over. Then, quietly, I whispered to no one in particular, "Yeah, I think it does." Months later, I moved. A smaller apartment closer to the coast, where mornings smelled like salt and evenings hummed with seagulls and fog. The first thing I unpacked wasn't furniture or books, it was the bag of coffee from her first cafe. Long empty, but still sealed tight. I placed it on the windowsill, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but of what I'd learned. Every Sunday, I visit the new cafe downtown. I order the same black coffee, sit by the window, and write. The baristas know me now. Sometimes they smile and hand me a cup that already has my name on it. I never know if Claire's in town anymore. Sometimes I hear she's opening another cafe, somewhere farther north. Sometimes people mention her at meetings, saying how kind she is, how she's helping people rebuild their lives. I don't need to reach out. Knowing she's out there doing good is enough. One rainy morning, I finished a story I'd been working on for months, a novel, maybe. Fiction, but only barely. It ended with a man and a woman sitting across from each other in a cafe, sharing a cup of coffee that didn't taste like revenge or regret, just warmth, just truth. When I typed the final sentence, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. I closed the laptop, took a long sip from my mug, and smiled at the world outside the window. The storm was finally over. And for once, I didn't need caffeine to keep my eyes open. The years that followed came quietly, without the drama I'd once mistaken for meaning. Life, it turned out, wasn't built on grand gestures or fiery endings. It was in the small consistencies that stitched each day to the next. The smell of rain through an open window. The weight of a mug in your hands. The calm that follows once you've forgiven yourself enough to stop looking for closure in someone else's eyes. I stayed near the coast. The Café Greux. Into something of a landmark. People travelled miles just to sit by the note carefully and slipped it into my wallet. For a long time, I just sat there, sipping slowly. The coffee was perfect strong, dark, honest. The kind she always said was too bitter, but that I always swore tasted like truth. Outside, the morning light thickened, the world alive with new beginnings. And for the first time, I realized I didn't miss her anymore. Not because I'd forgotten her, but because she'd stopped being a wound. She'd become something else entirely, a lesson, a story, a memory that no longer hurt to touch. I finished my coffee and left the cup on the table, still warm. As I stepped outside, the bell over the cafe door chimed softly behind me, and I knew this was it, the end, the real one. Not an ending of fire or rage or heartbreak, but an ending made of peace. The street stretched ahead, full of light and motion. I slipped my hands into my pockets and started walking, the salt air brushing against my face, the last traces of winter fading into spring. And somewhere behind me, in the hum of the city, I thought I could still hear her voice soft, amused. The way it used to sound before, everything changed. You finally got it right, Ethan. I smiled. Mes premières. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't want revenge. I didn't want redemption. I just wanted to keep walking forward, and that was enough. Vraiment? You're both pathetic, I said, staring across the long oak table at my parents and my ex-husband's mother. You actually thought you could parent trap us into falling back in love. After everything you did. My voice shook with rage and maybe a hint of laughter. Congratulations. You didn't reunite us out of love, you just gave us both someone to hate in common. The silence that followed was heavy. My father's face blanched. My mother's lips trembled, still clutching her wine glass like it could save her. Aunt Busmere, my ex in his chair with that smug little smirk I'd always hated, except this time. I almost admired it. Funny how the line between hate and alliance can vanish when betrayal shows its teeth. It started 6 months earlier, when I thought my life was finally stabilizing. After a year-long divorce, I'd learned to love the quiet no shouting. No slammed doors, no waking up to find Aaron's shoes left right in the doorway, like a booby trap for my ankles. I'd moved into a modest townhouse in Seattle, adopted a cat, started yoga, and even began seeing someone new, Derek, a kind, slightly awkward graphic designer who'd never once made me cry. Then my mother called. Sweetheart, she said, with that voice she used when she wanted something. We were thinking it's been almost a year since the divorce, and your father and I miss Aaron. We were wondering if maybe you could both come over for dinner. Just one evening. To catch up. I laughed. Out loud. You miss my ex-husband? Well, yes, she said breezily. He was part of the family for 7 years. He still calls us sometimes. You know, he checks in. He's such a thoughtful man. I almost dropped my phone. He what? Oh, don't be dramatic, she said. It's not like we're plotting anything. That should have been the first warning sign. But I was busy, distracted. Derek had just moved into his new apartment. I was pulling long hours at work. And I honestly thought my parents were just being their usual, sentimental selves. So premiers half polite, nitidi einer stupidity. The night of that dinner, I wore jeans and a black blouse casual, but not careless, and showed up with a bottle of wine I'd barely wrapped. When the door opened, I was greeted by the smell of rosemary, chicken, and the sound of laughter. Aaron's laughter. He was standing in the living room, chatting with my dad like nothing had ever gone wrong. He looked irritatingly good, hair shorter, beard trimmed, that same infuriatingly calm expression that once melted me and later drove me mad. Hey, he said, when he saw me. You look great. I wanted to leave. But my mum swooped in before I could. Huh? Look. At you too. Just like old times. She clasped her hands, eyes shining. Dinner's ready. The evening was a parade of forced small talk and subtle manipulations. Every topic somehow circled back to when you two